I'd like to share a story to help you all realize something. Certain decisions shouldn't be made in court because laws aren't made for love. As a child, I had the average life. I grew up with both parents, one sister, and two dogs. My sister was older, so of course she was the bully. My mother was a military parent, which made it hard for my father to keep jobs. No longer was it the man putting food on the table, but he was trying. I can remember when we moved to California, my father worked at a golf range. I used to hit at the range for free and always get a free drink, usually lemonade. See, my father and I always had a strong bond. Like father, like son, they always say. He always set up situations in my life to help me stay on the right path. He was like a best friend to me, except for I hated when he disciplined me. But what child don't? My parents got divorced when I was about 8. I was devastated. Ever since the divorce, I lived with my mom, but I always missed my pops. I remember every time I had a problem, my mom would tell me to call my dad. I didn't have the same bond with my mom as I did my father. I rarely got to see him much, only every summer winter break. By this time I was in Alabama, my dad lived in North Carolina. Those 9-hour drives was the worst, but it was worth it. I was a teenager when my father met his new fiancée, and she had a son, so every time I went to visit, it was like I had a brand new family. In my eyes, this family was way happier. We actually did things that families got to do. We went to dinner, we played games together, I had my first brother. After the 8th grade, my mom was shipped to Afghanistan. She gave me 2 choices. 1, I can go live with my grandma, or 2, I can live with my dad for 1 year. Of course I chose my dad. He was the closest friend, mentor, parent I had my whole life. My freshman year with my father and stepfamily was the utmost time I had in my whole life. My father, being the social man that he was, helped me become starting quarterback for the Douglasburg Eagles. I also made the varsity baseball team as a freshman and started as the right fielder. I was the only one in only 2 forward pass programs throughout the whole nation, learning about electricity and renewable energy at 15. I fell in love with Zoe Miranda Carter. I had a new baby sister. My grandparents lived within a mile. I was reunited with my childhood dogs, Hercules and Sasha, and I met my best friend, Willie McDonald. He's now a brother to me. Our house had a studio apartment set up underground where my stepbrother and I lived. I mean, this was life. My father made us pay rent while giving us allowance to teach us responsibility. We had our own freedom, our own place, our own life. I met some of the greatest people in the world. Coach Stone made me the man who I am today. Our physical trainer, Miss Spires, is the reason why I pursued physical therapy in college. She was my third mother. Coach Barber was like an older brother who I always looked out for to help me and help reach my potential. Life was like cloud 9. I had opportunities left and right to help me become a successful young man, and it was all because of my father. Life seemed forever, but then reality hit. My mother came back from Afghanistan. She wanted her son back, but the problem was, I didn't want to go back. Every young man is better off growing up with a father figure in his life. If he has that, why would you take it away? My parents fought over me like I was some kind of golden child. We had to go through court, let them decide what was right. And I was 16 at the time. At 16, I could drive a car, work at a business, join the military. I can even buy a lottery ticket. I was so confused why I couldn't just tell a judge I want to live with my father. Only 2 years away from being an adult, I need the law to tell me what's best for me. I find it ironic that at 16 you can leave home with or without parental consent, but can't stay at the home of my choosing with parental consent. This case was so difficult, it took a course of 5 days, over 4 months, and 2 different trials for a decision. I was never actually allowed in the courtroom because I was too young. I remember the first court date, I walked in with my father and a police officer started walking my way. He shouted the rules of the courtroom, stating that anyone under 18 isn't allowed to sit in the actual courtroom. And then he stared at me like I was his prey and pointed. "Are you 18, son?" I shook my head and he escorted me out. Later to find out that my mother told the officer about me so I wouldn't be able to witness the events that took place inside. On the final day for the last trial, I waited outside the courtroom eagerly. This was the longest day of my life. Mentally, physically, and emotionally, I was so drained I fell asleep. My dad came to my side and woke me only to create more suspense. He told me how the judge was in the room to conclude his decision. A couple minutes later, I was called in. My hopes were high, only to be shot, gutted, skinned, and worn as a coat while the rest of my body parts are tossed aside. How can you look me in the eyes and tell me you see a brighter future for a young man living with his father, but decide to send him with his mother? How can you ignore his consciousness and tell him that the laws regulate his custody and not his feelings? How can you watch him break down the moment you tell him he has to finish his high school career with his mother and not regret your decision? How can you break a unified family and trade it for unstable kin? How can you watch one's life die in front of you while his organs still function? Laws were not made for love. We all know right and wrong. We all need discipline. What if the laws within themselves cannot make a difference between right and wrong? What if the law enforcers themselves need discipline? What happens? To answer your question, nothing. And there lies the gray area. I hope you all understand why this area should be colored in. I know no one is perfect, but things have to change. We cannot keep letting our upcoming generations go through hardships based off what the government thinks when the government hasn't been there throughout one's life. In all court cases, all the judge wants to do is sum up your side of the story as I did this speech. Now you are the judge. Would you make a decision based off the tip of this iceberg, or would you let the iceberg drift off on its own path?